gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for August 5th, 2022. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, I did not update this, but, who cares? We're going to get into this no matter what. But first, join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Mess Mornings. It's Patrick Klepek from Waypoint. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've had a cold all week. It's not COVID. I still feel like shit. In the pre-show, you made me talk about the Chicago Bears, so I'm lubed up and ready to go. Let's talk about some video game news.
Yeah, let's do this. I figured that would work. I'm glad to hear that. It's like football. It's hard to go from having one of these teams where we're both NFC North teams to okay, now the year's starting. Where do I put my hopes? After, God, but for the Lions, it's been just 30 years, 40, almost 40 years for me now of just knowing they are never, ever going to do anything. So
our best player of the past 15 years, Calvin Johnson, doesn't want to associate with the team because he feels like he was stiffed on millions the team should have given him. And then the quarterback that we failed for a decade immediately won a Super Bowl and has a commercial that plays constantly making fun of the organization for that fact.
Yeah. Yes. Man, get your money, boy. Oh, well, we'll see. Detroit Red Wings are looking pretty good this year, everybody. All right. Well, before we get into this mess, let's explain ourselves. Each weekday, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news, the catch-up, where we discuss the biggest topics consuming the lives of gamers everywhere, and maybe even bring in some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. Hello, Twitch. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. If you are watching on there, please sure to hit that like button. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate Family Plan. This comes from Tyler Middledeer. I practiced this name beforehand. Middledeer, senior technical program manager from the Xbox News blog. It says, starting today in Colombia and Ireland, Xbox insiders can begin to preview a plan that allows multiple people to share Game Pass Ultimate benefits. This makes it even easier to play the best Game Pass games with friends and family across console, PC, and cloud by enabling you to add up to 4 people to your subscription, all with their own unique access to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate games, content, and benefits. The pricing for this, Patrick, they said 22 euros per month, I think, in Ireland. That, factors out to about $25 per month in US dollars if this were to come to, the United States. That seems like a pretty good deal, right? What do you think is happening here?
Well, just to back up a second, why Ireland? How do the places pick? Do you have any sense of what are the regions? Is it just occasionally there's on a dartboard, it's hey, we're a big international company.
It feels that way. Right, it used to, I remember when I was covering mobile games, test mobile games would launch in Australia and then Australia and Canada. And then I think those countries have, changed and shifted. I've not kept up. This seems like a similar kind of thing where this is just where you test stuff. You just test stuff.
And a smaller market thing. Yeah, it makes sense to me, on just a practical scale of rolling it out in places where there's smaller groups. You have a better sense of the data, and there's less of a scale. I'm just curious, is it at some point Xbox Ireland, if there is an Xbox Ireland, is hey, this is our we'd really like to be a part of this program. There's a presentation rollout of this is why we think we should get the Game Pass Family Ultimate Test.
It's got to be working backwards from demographics, right? This country just is pretty similar to what we are trying to hit when we go to bigger countries, and so. Therefore, and it's okay, Ireland, Colombia. I don't know. It does feel like a dartboard, though. That's what it actually feels like. I'll say that this kind of thing, I highlighted here. This makes it even easier to play the best Game Pass games with your friends and family, because to me, this feels like the kind of thing where they put out a deal that is kind of so good that it makes people who were already proselytizing Game Pass to want to go out and do this even more, because now they can get other people on and share the cost and save money, right? Or just get more people to play games with, if that's kind of what they care about. Because the more people who are on your Game Pass, they have those games, and now if you want to go play a multiplayer game, you have someone to play with. It's this network effect that sort of separates Xbox Game Pass from something like Netflix, where someone watching the same show as you is important. You want to have those conversations. It's not quite the same thing as someone playing a game with you at the same time, which can be a completely transformative experience, right?
Yeah. Do you have any sense of how, especially as we enter an era where places like Netflix are worried about password sharing after years of tweeting out how much they love password sharing,
Yeah.
how exactly does the remote access on things like this work? Like, is it like an IP gating sort of thing, or is it like a number of check-ins from different locations? Like, how exactly? Because you can immediately imagine the appeal of a service like this being, hey, like this splits the cost, like this gets us in the door for a bunch of games. Do you have any sense of how that works? So I haven't really messed with the family sharing stuff on any of the consoles, really.
Yeah, for this, they said as long as you are in the same country. So I would imagine that makes it a little bit easier to navigate, because that stuff's going to be like not just on an IP address level, but like an IP service, like backbone level, like the backbone of the internet in this entire country. If we know it's coming from there, yeah, you could share your family account with this person in this country. That's how it works for now. I don't know if they'll change that when this thing gets out of early access or whatever it's in right now. But also, I mean, the idea here seems to be getting ahead of where Netflix is at, right? Let's just offer a higher tier one that is about password sharing, that creates this opportunity for us to make a little bit more money while using the energy of our audience to market this service, and then at the same time gives people a way to like play a bunch of stuff with their friends. Netflix is like going to have to navigate that now, and because the problem is they had their service and they had their top tier service, and it was never about like family sharing, although you could like have up to like 4 accounts playing stuff at the same time, I think it was, or 4 sign-ins at the same time playing stuff. That was always like a weird side effect of the way that they did things. Now they have to be like, okay, we got to figure out how we get from here to there, and that's going to be a little bit more challenging. And they're going to have to raise the price. They want to like charge people more. They're like, we don't want you to stop. We don't stop you from password sharing. We're just going to charge you an extra $2.50 a month.
And that just seems
person.
like a better pitch. Like when, like, I think for a lot of people's situations with password sharing, which I like, Vice Legal, stop listening. Like I do all the time. Like I canceled my cable and then was like, well, my mom's still paying for a wildly over expensive cable package, and this is how I'm going to watch sports. And then she recently looked at her bill and was like, I wonder if I can get this down. And I discovered that she did that because all of a sudden I couldn't log into things like ESPN. And I was like, Mom, did you change your password? She's like, oh no, I have a much cheaper cable bill now. And I was like, yeah, Patrick's aware that you do. Like I'm happy for you, but I can't log into certain things now, and this is a problem. But it's one thing, because I think a lot of the times, at least my relationship with password sharing would be, it's just someone hands you the login and you're just piggybacking. Like,
yes,
it's not necessarily there is a financial arrangement, whereas like a family sharing thing,
correct, from
the jump, just like the terminology, the way you can imagine people setting it up, it feels better to raise the price $5-10 on a family sharing plan than it does on potentially a single individual who is just loaning out their passwords to their exes and their friends and isn't actually quite sure at this point who is logging into that account. Because how many of those people are like going into the like Netflix website checking like who has access?
I've done that once before, and that's when I discovered someone in South America had my password. I'm like, did my buddy in the Navy who is on my account go to South America and log in and never log out, or did he just like give it to his girlfriend there at the time or something? I'm like, okay, well, I'm cutting this off. Sorry.
I have a friend of mine who is in a long-term relationship, and so all of their accounts got intertwined, and then they had a messy breakup, and they recently revealed to me that they are still one of the associated accounts on an Amazon Prime. And so they're not charging anything to that person's account, but their name is like associated with it in the same way that like my wife and I share an account, even though I think she technically pays for it. So he keeps getting that sweet, labor exploitative 2-day shipping.
Right.
But at some point it's like, well, she's gonna, like, he's in too deep. Like the point that he was going to tell her about this was long ago. We are now years deep into an Amazon Prime con in which I was like, well, now you verbally told me, and I'm going to keep this secret for you. And I will never tell her, because I still see her like pretty frequently as well. But I was like, this is a sticky situation, because although you're not actually doing anything to that account, I think I would feel slightly violated and annoyed if you were ordering all sorts of things from Amazon on that shared account.
But I mean, that momentum you're speaking to, though, is exactly what Microsoft wants here. Like
they do. You
are risking this like human messiness because it's just so convenient, and you want to just keep everything going as is. It's just like I am invested in this ecosystem. I already have I bought some DLC for this game. if I get knocked off here, I'm either gonna have to pay for it myself or buy this video game. Like they want you, because once you're in there, all these things just start clicking into place, and you build like a home there. You start nesting in this ecosystem, and they want that. That keeps them. It benefits them in the long run, even if
they want to figure it out later.
Right, exactly.
Which is a lot of the a lot of these tech companies work. Like it's a lot of like social networks work.
Yes.
It's like, hey, get the users, figure out the monetization later. Now, granted, they have some monetization already in place, so like there's a structure that's a little similar than just exploiting people's like data they can mine in order to do targeted advertising. But it is a similar sort of model. Like, and you see Microsoft talk about this explicitly in their financials. Like, yes, we're glad, we're more important about the subscribers are important. The time played is important. Like how much we're making off it, we'll figure out that part later once we understand like what the market can bear and like what the market interest is. And so I'm with you. I think they are going to, like, weirdly, as we see in Netflix, like hit crunch time and like, hey, like we hit the subscriber cap. Now we need to figure out what to do next. Microsoft is in that like really dreamy period of like, you know what, just throw money into this money pit, burn it, and we'll figure out the rest later because we're trying to figure out a business model.
Right.
And so where do those walls close in later? I'm not sure. But I expect that, we're, I don't know, half a decade out from them truly caring about that. Like as long as like Azure keeps making a shitload of money for Microsoft, like as long as the cloud stuff essentially allows them to just ignore what's going on at Xbox, I can't imagine that Microsoft's going to worry about it too much.
And again, like just to speak to that point, like this is the kind of thing where making games way harder than making movies and television. We talked about that on the Bombcast earlier this week. People remember that. And it's Microsoft knows that it has a little bit longer rope than even Netflix did, because once they get to that subscriber cap, whatever that might be, which is a long way off, it's not like suddenly Disney's going to be able to come in and pull a Disney Plus on them. There's a few companies, a very small handful of companies that can maybe do this. And even those companies will probably want to either use Amazon or Azure as their backbone for like their online services. So it's like in the end, Microsoft's just really well positioned to capitalize on this. And they're going to be able to keep other people out by like making sure that Game Pass is as affordable as it is. And it's going to make people think, man, even if we do this, how do we make it profitable for us as a smaller company than Microsoft? So they are cornering and boxing out the market.
I mean, Hal, in a certain way, even saw, to illustrate your point of how difficult it is to just like, we're going to make video games. Apple Arcade launches a couple of years back, and their whole positioning of it is like, man, wasn't it so cool when we weren't making shitloads of money off of exploitive loot box free-to-play games? Remember when there was cool artsy games on this platform? Well, we're going to fund them. And we're actually, there's a service, you just subscribe to it, and we're going to make more of these. And the launch of Apple Arcade had a bunch of splashy and interesting games that like felt like the early years of playing games on the App Store. And then they quickly realized like, oh, this is like expensive and like really time intensive. Like, what would be easier is if we just look at what's really popular in the App Store and we just buy a time exclusive where we strip out the monetization aspect and just dump that into Apple Arcade, and we just loop those back into the ecosystem over and over again. And it's like, if a company like Apple with infinite capital and resources looks at that and goes, video games are a huge pain in the ass. Like, let's just not do it and just buy the ones that are already here. I think stuff like that at least gives you a small window into why they would have the longer runway.
Right. I mean, God, and like the current state of stuff like Ubisoft, you like, man, if we had hired that many employees and then we ended up in a situation like Ubisoft's in right now, no thanks. That's what like Google saw as their future, and they're like, no, thank you. Square Enix has a wild reason for getting rid of Crystal Dynamics and Eidos. This is from a Square Enix call with investors, as translated by David Gibson on Twitter. He said that the company explained that Crystal Dynamics and Eidos sales was the sale of those studios was driven by concerns that the titles cannibalized sales of the rest of the group, so it could improve capital efficiency. So it got rid of them because it would eat into other Square Enix sales. Patrick, make this make sense to me. Make this make sense to me.
It is cannibalizing our ability to sell to Sony in the near to midterm, and so we are doing whatever the executives at Sony need us to do to clean up the books so that we can not be a third party anymore. Because at this point, we're a second party, and it's so much easier to be a first party. Go look at, Bungie. Like, it's just so much easier to get bought and not worry about this bullshit anymore. I think that is just financial gobbledygook. And I'm not even
Yes.
necessarily insinuating that I have any reporting suggesting that like Square is getting eventually sold
This is
to Sony.
circumstantial evidence, right? It's circumstantial, looking at like the circumstances. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is them clearing the financial books to probably get sold, or at the very least, even if that wasn't to happen, it is them just doubling down on what works and realizing, hey, the games that we make, we're really good at it. Let's just make those, because our experiments in making games with developers outside Japan are kind of hit or miss. And so let's just focus on what's good. So like there's a world where, yeah, they're just making more Final Fantasy games and more Final Fantasy expansions and delaying Forspoken for I don't can never quite get that game's name right, but just delaying that 6 months more, and eventually it'll maybe come out. Or I think more likely is that they get sold to some sort of entity, and Sony makes the most sense. I can't imagine Microsoft, even if they wanted to, like I don't think they're going to be doing any major acquisitions anytime soon, just because of the way that the government is going to be turning the screws on them, and it would just be easier for Sony from all sorts of logistical standpoints to do it. It also makes sense for the fact that, hey, they're already paying all sorts of marketing and development costs to make these games exclusive. Seems like it would make sense at some point to turn that in-house. And so I don't really buy the excuse other than they found it difficult to oversee Crystal Dynamics.
Yeah,
it was a huge pain in the ass. They made okay money, but clearly the big bets they were making on things like Avengers weren't panning out. And they just don't quite understand those markets or what those audiences want. They're really good at making the Kingdom Hearts and the Final Fantasy. Why don't we just keep making those? And whether that turns into a sale or not is sort of like, it's relevant and irrelevant, because whichever situation they find themselves in, it's probably better for everybody involved that the split happened.
Yeah, and we don't know really what to expect from an Embracer owned, like whatever, like Crystal Dynamics, Eidos. I'm not sure
what to expect from Embracer.
Embracer, exactly. In overall, right? But it's like, it's early. The rumblings I've heard is that like the studio, I think Crystal Dynamics, right? I think wants to immediately get into Deus Ex. Is that Crystal Dynamics or Eidos? I can never like keep it straight.
That is Eidos Montreal was the Deus Ex studio.
Right. They want to get right back into that, and they're like want to challenge, like they want to do what Cyberpunk 2077 couldn't and stuff like that. That's the word going around. I mean, whatever. We'll see if that happens. It's so early. Who knows like what that'll turn into. But that was probably not even, there was no possibility for that conversation to even begin under the current Square Enix, right?
No. And that's where I think it was best for all parties. I mean, it's true that, the Eidos and Crystal games were blowing the doors off, financially, but, those games were greenlit because Square said, that makes sense. Let's go do that. In what world, I remember talking to somebody that was a kind of an external producer brought on early on the Avengers project, and I was asking like, well, how is that going? They're like, well, do you think it was smart to ask a studio that's used to making third person action adventure games to make a monetization heavy brawler thing? Like, how do you think that would go? Do you think the skill sets from those like previous teams directly applied to that? Probably not. And this person was being brought in with more expertise on like the brawler side to like try and get the combat up to snuff and so that sort of thing. And so, Square, in their financials, they can sit and whine all they want about how these games were financial misfires. But like, so someone greenlit those pitches and was attracted by what they could turn into, and was maybe a misuse of resources of those teams. And so whether Embracer turns to be like the better sort of like omnipotent, financial backer of those, I don't know. I kind of get the sense is that Embracer is in this kind of period of, I don't know, we're going to spend a bunch of money and we'll see where we're at in 5 years. And hopefully these like lower cost bets that we just throw up on Steam will sort of like have a financial cushion while we figure out what's going on going forward. But I'd love to see them take a whack at a new Deus Ex. I mean, I quite liked those two games. The second one wasn't nearly as good as the first one.
Yeah. And it's, money was cheap in Europe, and I think that was the big thing powering Embracer. Who knows how much longer that lasts? Doesn't seem like it's going to last much longer. What is the transition then? Like, how do they go from this acquisition feast to then a long tail of building games using what they already have? We just have no idea what to expect there. As with every company, reporting their earnings during this earnings season, Square Enix's sales are down. HD Games sales did not reach the level of previous year despite the release of multiple new titles. They say this. I looked at the last quarter. I didn't see a lot of like big games from Square Enix during the April, May, June period, but I don't know. And it did look busier last year, so that makes sense. They would be down to me. But this is what they say. They're like, hey, we released a bunch of stuff and sales are still down. That said, software sales across the board for everybody down. Like, this is just not surprising. This is just where it's at right now. They did note for their MMO games, paying subscriber numbers for Final Fantasy XIV rose year over year. That game unstoppable, it seems like.
It is so fascinating to imagine an alternate scenario in which that game is not the success that it is, similar to when like Capcom pre Monster Hunter World, in which I'm sure you were hearing similar things of sort of like, you know, nothing substantial like Capcom was going to get sold, but it was like, hey, like the company's in sort of a weird B tiered financial state, like they're doing fine, but I don't know, it kind of feels like similar to where like Ubisoft was at. Like RE7 was a hit, but it wasn't the sort of like hit that transforms a company. It's one of my favorite games of all time, but Monster Hunter World like was a transformative moment for that company. And like, whereas that was like one game that was like a giant blockbuster that hit, and sort of like the company was off to the races after that. And it's just had hit after hit after hit. And it just seems to be like operating at a like on all cylinders in a way that I haven't seen Capcom operate in decades, frankly.
For real.
It's just hard. I'm just so curious, what is a Square Enix that doesn't have like their MMO like just as a money factory?
I mean, they are so lucky they do have it. It feels like. I mean, it's without Final Fantasy XIV, this company feels lost. And we're not just talking about like, oh, they're Western games. This is a company that greenlit The Quiet Man and Let Live. A friggin' front mission Metal Gear ripoff that is atrocious, and was the Balan Wonderworld. I mean, these are greenlit games. They're from like Square Enix Japan proper, saying, hey, this is what we want to be investing our money in, and I don't get it. Like this, like clearly there are some issues with like picking and choosing the games they're going to publish. And then, you know, some of that's not to say all of their games have like tripped and fallen all over themselves. There's been some successes, but it's like, you know, I think there's also a lot of stuff like Chrono Cross comes out, and it's like, yeah, that's doing pretty well. It's not lighting the world on fire, but it's doing okay. It all comes down to
Live Alive is a game that I think is quite good and interesting, but I don't think that game's going to sell more than 100,000 copies, you know, pulling a number out of my ass. You know what I mean? Like
it did very well in Japan from the Famitsu sales. It like was already at like 70,000 copies sold just in Japan. So that one might be a surprise hit. I agree. Like it was like hard to gauge where that one was going to be, but it seems like that one's probably going to maybe get to 500,000 to 1 million for them. So that's good. That's good. Let's see. Microsoft gives Xbox Series S devs more memory to improve graphics performance. This comes from Tom Warren at The Verge. A new Xbox software development kit has been released to developers recently, and it frees up more memory for developers to access for Xbox Series S games, and it also boosts performance in certain titles. This is a quote from the game dev team. Hundreds of additional megabytes of memory are now available to the Xbox Series S developers. That gives developers more control over memory, which can improve graphics performance in memory-constrained conditions. This is important because the one issue with the Series S so far has been memory. The CPU, GPU, very powerful. More powerful than you really need for 1080p 60 gaming. More powerful than like if you were to build a PC, like the GPU I would recommend if you were trying to build a budget PC to do 1080p 60, I would probably recommend something that's even less powerful than the Xbox Series S. So you're good on that side of things. Developers were running into memory issues. So, and Microsoft sort of finding a few hundred extra megabytes is going to probably make a little something of a difference. It's pretty interesting that they did this. I don't remember many instances of something like this happening in the past, Patrick. Do you?
No, and I'm sure to some degree it must certainly speak to some of the complaints or feedback they're getting from developers. I'd be so curious to know what is the split, like what is I know that the Series S has sold exceptionally well, like largely not just because of the price, but also just like availability. It's the one that if you go to Target, it's there, and like otherwise you're not finding anything else behind the glass, or it's just a note that says please ask if we have it behind the shelf, because we're not putting these things out for regular people to touch. It's certainly been a successful gambit that they couldn't have guessed that. I wonder if it's been more successful than they anticipated, not just because of price, but because of COVID specifically, in which it comes during a period in which, hey, people wanted to buy a new console. This one was going to, essentially it was kind of like, if you had an Xbox Series X, like Xbox One X. It's like a nice almost like you're shoving in a new GPU. The games are going to run nicer, they're going to run faster. And it's a nice like optional console to have like in a second part of your house. Like I've thought about getting one because my Series X is connected in my office, and it's the cloud stuff works okay-ish, but it's like, wouldn't it just be easier for me to buy like Series S to just have that connected upstairs and just not have to worry about the cloud stuff? But anyway, I do wonder if the COVID situation of the last 2.5 years has created an instance in which this console has become more popular and more used than they expected. And so they're feeling more of a crunch than they would have based on previous expectations of how well it would have done. And as a result, you have developers maybe, I don't know if they're getting I wonder how much of this is driven by users or developers, right? Like, are users upset with like the performance of their games? And so then developers are hearing that feedback? Or is this, hey, you're making it harder for development writ large because this game is essentially like the base level PC that we have to spec towards, and it's kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know.
I would not be surprised, and this is not based on any report, it's just speculation. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like Starfield needed this, and you guys need to figure out how to do this, because we need this game to be able to be played really well on Series S. And so we're figuring out, and now everyone's going to benefit. I wouldn't be surprised if it was something like that. Like they had a very specific game in mind they wanted to make sure was running as best as it possibly can, as good as it possibly can, and they they figured it out. They did the engineering work, and here we are. So yeah. We got a series of kind of smaller game announcements that I wanted to go over, and like expansions and stuff. Let's start here with Back 4 Blood Expansion 2, Children of the Worm getting its release date. Turtle Rock and Warner Brothers have announced details of Expansion 2 for zombie shooter Back 4 Blood. It is launching at the end of this month. Entitled Children of the Worm, the expansion follows the release of the previous DLC, Tunnels of Terror, that arrived back in April. Children of the Worm has been set for August 30th. Players will be able to pick it up either standalone or as part of the Back 4 Blood annual pass. If you have the deluxe edition of the game, you'll get it as part of all that stuff. Back 4 Blood, Patrick, do you have any one of these, a PvE multiplayer, 4 people team up and go out and take on waves and waves of enemies? Do you have one of these games? Is Back 4 Blood yours?
We at Waypoint, we actually played through all of the original campaign of Back 4 Blood some months back, and it was fine. Right. Like, the card stuff, like, didn't really do anything for me. It seemed like a unique way to present, different, like a skill tree, essentially, like in a roguelike fashion for the game. But I got to the end of it and was like, I'm good. Like it was a game that I had a great time playing with my friends on stream, but didn't really have the impulse to come back to. I mean, these games in general are like, I'm so jealous of people that have so many of these types of games that I would have put in so many hours when I was younger. Like, I know that I still look 17, but I swear to you, I'm a father of 2 and I'm 37 years old. I'm closer to 40 than I am to 20, even if it doesn't look it. But like, I would have played the shit out of these games when I was younger. And these days, like a game with, when he presents me a game with infinite replay value, I look at you and go, that makes me sad because I need to see the end credits so I can move on to something else. And the notion of there being no end credits is the most distressing thing that you can say to me. So at least Back 4 Blood did have some end credits, and I could say, I did it. I saw the final cutscene. I can move on to the next thing.
Right, when the credits are a thing you could select on the opening screen of the game, you're like, uh-oh. Is that a wiki concept page? I wonder if that's a wiki concept page. Games that have their credits on the opening screen.
That is a unique thing. I was struck by this. We did a stream recently where Renata Price, who I work with, is much younger. I believe she's only 22 years old, and so we're doing this feature called Ren's Blockbuster on Fridays, where when you do like a nostalgia stream, it is like, yeah, hey, like who wants to play like NES, SNES, Genesis games, and it's like, no, like nostalgia for Ren. To illustrate, the game that we're doing today that she played when she was 13 is Too Human, Jeff.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is messed up.
Right.
That would have been the last thing I would have expected you to say. Jeez.
Another one on her list was, and this will have good import for the giant bomb audience, is sleeping dogs. Like when we were picking up the purse.
Right, that was like on this website.
I know.
I
know.
Oh my God.
I lived through it. I lived through it. And anyway, it's just all to say. I don't know where I was going with that. I had a point.
That's fine. Yeah. If you get back to it,
I just wanted to make everyone feel young, and then I was going somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
I blame it on the cold.
We're for UPF today. We're doing games from 2002, and I'm expecting a lot of people in chat to be like, "Yeah, that's the year I was born." That's and stuff like that.
Games from 2002. Games from 2002.
Well, I'm playing a modified version of Metroid Prime where I can play with mouse.
Oh, is this the keyboard and mouse? Oh, modified. Oh, you've got one of those hacked GameCubes.
Yes, I got one of those hacked GameCubes. That's right.
Damn,
yes.
And it can like output in 4K too.
That's right.
That's what we're always saying when we're doing our streams. Like this hacked PS2 has this cool saving and loading features. It's wild.
Let me go get the cartridge from the back room. Yeah,
legal
exactly.
wink, wink. I need to cut to card. Something is going wrong with my hacked GameCube.
Oh man, I hacked this one up so we can play online against each other. Here we go. Let's go for it. I also might try to play Ultimate Muscle, one of the Aki wrestling games that actually came out in 2002 in Japan, but I don't care. I'm going to count it.
Do you think? Do you think that Metroid Prime remaster is going to look better than the version of that game you could play using the thing?
I'm like really wondering. So like what they do for the fan version, what they do is they use that Topaz Gigapixel software. Ooh. That's really good at up-resing stuff. It's like really, really good. And people did this for like Final Fantasy VII and stuff. And of course, it's always just one guy. He's like, I was trying it with this one tool and it was not meeting my standards. And then Gigapixel came out and I just did the entire game in like a couple of weeks. I just sat there and do texture after texture and I installed that and it does look fantastic. I'm gonna bet it's not going to be quite as good as the modded stuff from the fans, because listen, having fans make stuff is like there's a risky thing there where like they're going to just kind of like do this a loop where it's like they just the feedback loop kind of thing, and that's always a problem. But if you're going to have them do stuff to like up-res a game or take care of something that exists, I think fans can do a really good job of it because they pay attention to every little minute detail. Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, I can close the loop here. One. There is a concept page. Someone put it in the chat. Marino added you. So there is the credits menu option.
Thank you, Marino.
Shout out the Giant Bomb Wiki never fails to deliver. Two, the entire reason I brought it up was because the first game we played in Ren's Blockbuster was Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. And that was a nostalgic game for her. She's never played Final Fantasy VII, which is wild and like really interesting. Mm-hmm. But when we loaded up that game's title screen, and this is the reason that the credits thing kind of triggered this for me, is that it's like, like new game, load game options, probably credits. But then at the bottom, it just says, character designer Tetsuya Nomura. And I was just like, maybe there should also be a wiki section on Giant Bomb that is like, developers who can get like title billing on the front of a game when you are not the director. Like that doesn't even happen for like most people who are creative directors, like right. Like being a character designer to Tetsuya Nomura. Yes, it's like it's incredible. It's like
Sid Meier wasn't necessarily directing those Civilization games anymore, but it's like that even feels a little bit different than what you're talking about. I don't know. That's interesting. All right, let's go through these other ones. Frogwares is making a new Sherlock Holmes game based on one of its earlier releases, and the project has already met its Kickstarter goal. Let me bring this up here for people who can take a look at the game while we talk about it. This comes from their Kickstarter post. We originally released Sherlock Holmes: The Awakened back in 2006 as a standalone story with a mature Sherlock taking on the case of supernatural mystery and intrigue. For quite some time, we've had the idea that our game from 16 years ago can be the perfect foundation for the continuation of our young Sherlock story arc that started with our latest game, Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1. So we are taking this foundation and remaking The Awakened entirely from the ground up. On top of a slew of visual and gameplay changes, we are rewriting the story to be a direct continuation of young Sherlock. And here's like a list of things that they're improving, like graphics, asset models, new animations, new cutscenes, additional investigation gameplay mechanics, rewriting the story to connect the case from The Awakened to a younger Sherlock, stuff like that. This is I'll say that one of the reasons I did want to put this here is like, okay, I know some people were really into these Sherlock Holmes games. The game hit Kickstarter and it's already like past its goal, like in like first couple hours. So there's a lot of demand out there for this from that audience, and it sounds like this is exactly the kind of thing they want. So, and I'm like, I guess I'm a little surprised that a game can come out and immediately hit its goal on Kickstarter. Now, of course, they set the goal very low, but still, they like $100,000 right out the gate. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's still working for this kind of game. I'm a little bit surprised by that. What about you, Patrick?
Well, it's probably important to note that they are also situated in Ukraine, and so I think there is probably a motivation here to, like, a lot of how they're pitching this game is like, hey, it's pretty shitty to make games here right now because of that whole Russia thing. Not great. And so, I think this is in some ways, an appeal to, an audience that would be sympathetic to what is happening to the particularly awful situation this developer is in. A developer who's found themselves like multiple times in like weird.
Yes.
I was obsessed for like the better part of a week with the push and pull that Frogwares was having.
I think I was reading some of your stories.
Yeah,
about
the
this.
Sinking City, I think it was in which they were. I forget the particulars of like the legal spat they were in with their publisher, but the long and short of it was like this: like the publisher was putting up a version of the game on Steam that wasn't being sold by Frogwares. Then Frogwares was issuing like DMCA requests to Steam to have that taken down so they could put up their own version of the Sinking City on Steam. Just, this company seems to have been through the ringer. They make games that I've never been particularly interested in, but I know that they are beloved by the people that do like them. And
exactly.
So, even absent the Ukraine situation, I think this studio is just one that people just show up for. Like if they scratch an itch that people just can't get enough of.
Exactly.
And I think then you throw in the war, and it's just like fuck it, like they can have some of my money. And this, my understanding is this is like one of the more beloved ones of the earlier games they have made. So a lot of it lines up pretty well.
It also feels very Sherlock Holmesy, right? At a certain point, like you're pulling from a lot of the same stories over and over. And if you've done one of these games before, well, yeah, it's okay to pull from your own stuff to like to reestablish it and sort of remake it in this fun way where it's tying into this new storyline you got going on. Yeah, very cool. Let's see here. Grim Guardians. So Inti Creates, developer of Azure Gunvolt, is making Grim Guardians Demon Purge, a 2D Castlevania-style action platformer. Players take control of two sisters with different attacks and capabilities to challenge the demon castle and the bosses waiting within. Discover new routes through the castle using the sisters' unique abilities. One of them is a long-distance focus fighter. The other one is a brawler. I can't tell. Can you switch between the two of them on the fly? I think that's what's happening here. I like Azure Gunvolt. I played the first one. I haven't played any of the sequels. They're very Mega Man X, which was never exactly my kind of game. I think I'm very much into the idea of that studio going more towards something that's closer to Castlevania. Where are you at with this?
Yeah, I fell off like this style of game a little while back because I feel like Symphony of the Night was like such a big deal for me when I was a kid, and then they put out like 7 of those like in a row between like the Game Boy Advance and the DS, and then at some point I transitioned to, now I just can't get enough of like the Dark Souls inspired Metroidvania crossovers. So I mean, this looks like a good one of those. I don't have much of a history with like this studio in particular, but I think also part of the problem is like you can load up Steam these days and there are just 1,000 of these that are like, and it's sometimes hard for me to figure out what is the one that like I need to spend my time with. And part of that's like they're appealing to different aesthetics and different, this one's a little more, anime adjacent, I suppose. And so I can see where that falls. I'm trying to remember what's the one that I got really into a couple of years back. It was made in Spain. Is a Dark Souls inspired Metroid style game.
Yeah, I remember you talking about it too, and I'm trying to remember it too. The one I was playing recently is Deedlit Lotus War or something. That's available everywhere now. Blasphemous. Yes.
Look, you have seen a million trailers that promise you to play a like Dark Souls adjacent Metroid style game that is so common these days, especially with like, and it's also got gorgeous 2D pixel art. So does everything these days.
Yes.
But Blasphemous is like an absolute banger of a video game. And so although I cannot speak to this studio in particular, I can say you should go play Blasphemous because that game ruled.
Yeah, I've been on a kick with these games just because of the Steam Deck, where it's like,
100%.
They're all on Steam, so I can just play them here. Yes, exactly. Crypt of the Necrodance. Oh, wait, here, actually, let me just go here. SNK brings a pair of obscure Mega Man games to Switch. This is Matt Leone at Polygon. Patrick, I almost only specifically put the story here because it was Matt Leo, and I'm like, he's writing a news story. He must just love these games or something.
He does. I think this fits his wheelhouse.
SNK announced that the 2000 Japan-only Neo Geo Pocket Color game Rockman Battle and Fighters is now available on Switch under the name Mega Man Battle and Fighters in the West, though still in Japanese. It's a port of two mid-90s Capcom arcade games, Mega Man The Power Battle and Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters, both of which were added fighting game elements to the Mega Man formula. They were scaled down to fit the portable hardware of Neo Geo Pocket Color. He says, where all this gets to be a bit of a dogpile and kind of weird is that Capcom just released the arcade versions of Mega Man The Power Battle and Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters on Switch a couple of weeks ago as part of its Capcom Arcade Second Stadium collection. But hey, if you want the weird Neo Geo Pocket Color versions of these, here you go. There are a lot of Mega Man games, turns out. Like, I get to like I know the Battle Network ones. These ones I don't even remember. They never even got into my head.
No, I don't think I had a Neo Geo Pocket Color, and I think I imported, like, this was back when I was writing about games like really early on in like the late 90s, early 2000s, in which you could make. I was writing for Gaming Age, an old website of people around back then, and that's when I was getting my first money writing about games, and so I'd have enough money to import stuff, and so like that's where I got like a Dreamcast for the first time. I got a Neo Geo Pocket Color, but I don't think I played the Mega Man fighting game. So this one is new even to me, and as someone that has played most of the Mega Man games, although like you, the network RPGs, like for some reason passed me by. So I'm excited for that new collection to come out, although my understanding of that collection is like they're all kind of the same game, and then maybe you should just play 3. I think like that's what I heard from a lot of people. It's like just play the third one if you're gonna play one of them, and if you want more, well, there's more here.
Let's see here, and then Crypt of the Necrodancer Synchrony is out now in Steam Early Access. Crypt of the Necrodancer Synchrony is a massive new content pack for Crypt of the Necrodancer. It adds online multiplayer co-op and versus, 3 new characters, full mod support, and a built-in mod portal, new items, enemies, and traps, and more. Patrick, I thought they were done with Crypt of the Necrodancer, so this surprised me. This is I'll go back to this and play some more Necrodancer. It's a good game.
It's been 5 years since they last really touched the game, right? So
right. It's been because they put out a whole other Cadence of Hyrule is like kind of old at this point. That's like several years old at this point. So yeah, this has been a while.
And I believe they announced they teased their next game, right? Like Rise of the
Rift of the Necrodancer. No other details there. I don't know what to expect. Is that a League of Legends Necrodancer game?
I cannot explain why I didn't get more into Crypt of the Necrodancer. I love rhythm games. I can get into a roguelike. They are not my favorite genre, but occasionally like a game like Spelunky will come along and it'll become one of my favorite games of all time. And so I thought that, Crypt would have kind of been up my alley, but I just never quite clicked for me. But I like so much of what they're doing that I kind of came away from my experience with that game being like, well, maybe this isn't for me, but I really like what the studio's obviously extremely smart. And I can't wait to see what they do next. So maybe this is an opportunity to jump back into that. Also seems like a game that would be very good on the Steam Deck, frankly, as we're talking about. And I'm always looking for something to play on the couch with my Steam Deck while my kids are watching, their Propaganda Paw Patrol episodes.
Exactly. Yes.
While I'm telling them that cops are great by getting them to watch Paw Patrol. And I need something else on the Steam Deck. And so, that I might have to give that another shot because people do really like those games.
I would say even try Cadence of Hyrule. That Zelda music is so good. It's Danny B doing those remixes. They're fantastic. They are just off the wall good. All right, let's get to the catch up where we're just gonna maybe catch up on some of the things people are discussing, especially coming from yesterday. We did this story yesterday about the Switch supply and demand issue where Nintendo said, hey, we might not have a new Switch or we're not going to have a new Switch hardware this fiscal year, excuse me. We got a little bit more from David Gibson on Twitter from what Furukawa, who is the CEO of Nintendo, said about this. And he kind of talked about it from the perspective of the supply and demand of the Nintendo Switch. He said, normally we would stockpile inventory in the summer to be ready for the end of the year when it is at its peak. And sales is what they're talking about there. This summer, we have not been able to produce as much as in previous years. Even if we can produce the volume we want, I'm not optimistic that we will be able to sell it all. That's the other thing here. It's like he's saying pretty much for the first time that they seem like if we were to stockpile as much as we normally would we be able to sell it all? Now they are expecting to sell 18 million more Switches through the end of the year, and that's on top of the 3 or 4-ish that they just sold. So that'll get them to their previous guidance for the year of 21 million Switch systems sold. That's still a huge number, but if you look at the shipments, like July was way down, and it's like, is that just supply issues? That's what they are saying, or is this also them maybe pulling back and saying, well, supply issues, but maybe we should also step back and let a foot off the gas while we look ahead to what's next. I'm like kind of still a little bit confused about this, Patrick, where, okay, yeah, sure, maybe they're saying there's no new Switch hardware this fiscal year. I don't know if I fully buy into that. Maybe there's going to be some kind of revision to like keep these numbers going up, or maybe they are going to be preparing for something bigger next year. But what do you think? Do you think that when we look at this chart here that's on the screen right now, you can see that, year over year, the red line, things are down, but it's not as big of a drop as it has been sometimes in the past. But in terms of just raw shipments, it is way down to just like, what was that? Like for July, it was just over 600,000 for that month. It's like has never been that low in the last 2 years, even throughout the pandemic. So that seems extremely low. What do you think's happening here?
I mean, it would not be, wild to see this as a company like Nintendo just being conservative in the way that they're always conservative, where there are a lot of signals that the American economy is, if not in a recession, is contracting, or at least it's got weird vibes.
Right?
Like I think like that is probably the takeaway is like terms like, are we in a recession? Yes or no, yada, yada. It's like all just sort of, philosophical looking back bullshit. But like the economy's got weird vibes right now. And so it's like lots of numbers are like, this seems really good. Gas is coming down. But new jobs are sort of like, it's just sort of weird vibes. And like, I think Nintendo taking the stance of like, we don't really know. Like, let's just wait and see. We have an incredible lineup of banger games coming out the rest of the year, while everyone else is. Look, Nintendo has decided we'll just finish games and sit on them for 6 to 12 months, including manufacturing carts and boxes and just leaving them in warehouses for upwards of a year before they even will announce the games.
Yes.
Wild shit that this company gets up to.
Fire Emblem is like in that situation right now, I think. It's one of those games.
They've had multiple games now where I'll hear about it right before they're announced. They're like, yeah, this has just been sitting in a warehouse for months. But they're in a unique situation where they don't have to live quarter to quarter in the way other companies do. And I think this may be the company just being very conservative on their estimates. And would it shock you if we got through the holidays and they said actually things were just fine, and everything, and then all of a sudden they get to turn around next year and start talking about a new Zelda and whatever else they got cooking, because they're ahead of the 8 ball as opposed to behind the 8 ball as every other developer, every other sort of major game company is. And so I take this as them just looking at the state of the world economy and going, I don't know. So why overpromise when it's so much easier to just deliver, just surprise people later.
I think you're exactly. They are the squirrel that nested away so many extra eggs that they can afford to pause and even have months where okay, you're having supply issues. You know what? We're not going to panic trying to figure this out. We are going to take this time to assess what our plan is going to be for the next several months to the next year or so. And they're the one company in this market that can afford to do that. So they're doing it.
For them, it's they have an aging or at least older console relative to the PS5 and then the new Xboxes. And so when they experience a dip, is this a dip relative to consumer spending habits, or is this a dip relative to, hey, people are getting tired of the current Switch, we need a refresh? And so that's those are two wildly different things. And lots of consumer spending is going down, in which it would be not shocking at all if their holiday sales were through the roof, and whatever timeline they have for another Switch is just throw it out. Who gives a shit? Whoops, just move it back another 18 months. And so I think this is an instance in which it's just they're looking at the macro conditions and trying to figure out how that actually impacts their bottom line. And there's just really no way to tell until you get more data.
No way to tell. And then the data we're getting Weird vibes. 500,000 jobs added today, apparently, or in July. What the? What are you talking about?
We're in recession, but like, it's very easy to get. I know. Yeah.
We're on the pathway to hell, I thought. No, okay. All right. Whatever. All right. There's going to be a Kirby concert later. I think it's next week. Let's see here. August 11th. So Nintendo announced this. You're going to be able to watch it live. They're going to post the archive of it later. I'm into Kirby music. Kirby music won an Emmy, or I'm sorry, a Grammy, like last year, right? It's like, that's how good Kirby music is. So.
Well, maybe this can win an Emmy. So,
yes,
how do we get Kirby to an EGOT?
Let's get an EGOT for our boy Kirby. Yes. I love it. And then this last one here, Mario Kart 8 DLC tracks may have leaked due to music data mining. There's a whole bunch of tracks listed here. I just want to, like, I don't know how into Mario Kart you are, Patrick. For me, like, I like it. I can't remember the names of courses except for Koopa Beach for the N64 is not on this list, and it hasn't been part of the previous waves, and it's not in the game. It's one of my favorite tracks. I'm like, man, I'm starting to get worried. It's not going to be in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at all. But do you have anything like that from Mario Kart that you're like, man, I wish they would put that in here?
My relationship with Mario Kart these days is, so it's mostly a game that my kid lost the cart, and she lost it. I didn't lose it. Right. Jessica, not my fault. Okay. Yep. Should have kept track of that. You have your own Switch, aka Daddy's old Switch that was sitting in a drawer and he gave it to you. And then he has to remind the parents in the neighborhood, no, Patrick did not spend $300 on a new Switch for his 5-year-old. He had one in a drawer.
No, he spent $300 on a new one for him, for me.
Yeah. Exactly. Whoops, this OLED Switch is just like, I guess I got to get this.
Yeah.
I don't play a ton of Mario Kart except that, like, when she asked me to play it with her. But that game, I cannot praise enough these sort of like kid-friendly features it has in terms of allowing. So it has automatic, like the cars just go.
Yep.
It has automatic driving that essentially keeps them from falling off.
Yeah,
but
smart
it still
steering.
allows. Yes, yeah. But it still allows them to control. And if your kids were even younger, it has like gyro steering on well. So, like, but one of the first times my kid was interacting with it, she just didn't understand the analog stick, and I was like, "Don't worry about it. You don't have to press anything. Like, just tell me which character you want to be, and then I'll hit go, and then all you have to do is like turn this thing." And it's just delightful. And it was things like that illustrated to me how many games don't could have more of that. Like, the amount of time, I don't care that much if my kids play games. Like, they should figure out their own hobbies. But when I've met my kids halfway on it, where they've wanted to play things, I am so frustrated. Like, hey, this game's hard because she doesn't understand what going left to right on a screen is. Can I just turn off dying so that she can just understand how a jump works? And most games just don't comply. But Mario Kart just has a level of accessibility for that I found just delightful. And I just wish, and actually Super Mario Odyssey has a pretty wonderful set of tools that like get you halfway there on a pretty complex 3D platformer.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's the kind, like, you're right. Like, the kids are going to do their own thing, but when, like, if I have a friend over and, you know, family over and we sit down to play games, that's all the kids want to do too. They want a controller. They want to be part of the fun. And there are it's a very limited number of games that can support, like, especially like because with Mario Kart, I could play, friends could play, the kids could play, and everyone could just be participating on whatever level they want to play, but all at the same time. Almost no games support that. So Mario Kart's kind of a miracle.
When I introduced her to when the new Mario Party came out, I was like, well, maybe this will be something we could do as a family. And I just I couldn't dumb down the AI enough. And she like, it's like we made it 2 rounds before she was crying. I was like, this isn't worth it. Like, we're not playing Mario Party again. And then we revisited, I think, like a year later. I was like, all right, let's see. She's got a better sense of how controls work now. And she made it through a whole round. I didn't have to defend the AI from her. I was like, I'm very proud of you, Jessica. Like, you did this. Like, you made it through an entire round of Mario Party, which, you know, I feel like there's no better, salute to Giant Bomb than explaining how I got my kid through a round of Mario Party.
There it is. That is perfect. Let's get to the poll here for the yesterday. We asked over under, and apparently a lot of people had issue with this terminology. They're like, what does that mean? I just can't. Okay, I just can't.
You don't have enough gambling degenerates.
I guess, but it's like, what else
you
could
on Twitter?
Okay, Nintendo launches the Switch follow-up, Pro or Switch 2, by December 25th, 2023. What could over possibly mean, but past that date? I just don't get how in anyone's brain over would. I mean, the only thing I can imagine is they're looking at a physical calendar, and over would be, I guess, before. But why? Like, that's so many hoops you have to go through to get to that point. whatever. 53% said over, 47% said under. I'm not. I guess I'm not too surprised by this split. People are. I think this reflects what we were talking about, where Nintendo doesn't necessarily know what to expect. So I bet internally they're being pretty fluid, and they're happy that they can be reactive and do what they need to do to meet the needs of the market as the market changes. Right?
Yeah. I would always push back your expectation for whatever the next handheld is from Nintendo, because they are under absolutely zero pressure outside of intense fan anxiety, and leakers
Right.
making their their lives a little more anxious. But there is nothing to suggest they need to do it anytime soon, other than maybe at some point. You see things like what was the on Super Mario 3D World, Bowser's Fury, right?
Right.
So one, how has it been 6 years since another Mario game? Bowser's Fury is excellent.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely
I love it.
adored.
Yes.
And I desperately hope that Bowser's Fury is a template for what they're going to do for the next Mario game. But even in that one was one of the first instances where I saw, I wonder if Nintendo's own developers are starting to hit constraints on developing. That game is 60 frames a second, docked, 30 frames a second on handheld, and that's a really noticeable split between the two experiences. It's perfectly playable in both, and so that's one of the only tensions I can imagine is their developers being anxious about the technical limitations. My guess is that I don't think that would be enough. I think that I just at every turn would just assume it's going to happen later, but then you'll just wake up one day and there'll be a fully polished promo video for a Switch 2. And that's what I'm expecting to happen. I'll take no guesses on when it's actually happening, because what will happen is you'll just wake up one day and there'll be a video on their channel that says, hey, you can buy it. And, the Switch was from announcement to release was 3 months. It was a really quick turnaround, right?
At the most 4 months, because it was in that December we got that first teaser video. Then there was a little bit of something between that and March when it came out, right? It was at the end of March. So
so I expect something like that to happen. Is it'll just appear out of nowhere, and it's pre-orders are open tomorrow.
Right, and it was never going to be at E3. Even if they were to have done an event, they never do it at E3. It has its own thing, its own special time when it gets announced. And maybe September's coming. Maybe we'll see something. I doubt it though.
I mean, it's the thing I'll say about the I have been in the same boat of the Switch Pro, Switch 2 anxiety as a lot of people, in which it is now just a Nintendo exclusive machine for me because of the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck relieved a lot of the annoyance I had. Because of the way my life is set up, the Switch fitted in perfectly for years of just this is how I want to play games. This is how I want to enjoy games. I get to play more games because of the Switch form factor.
Yes.
But then once independent games started kind of running crummier and crummier on that machine, it was this isn't now I'd rather just go play these games on my PC, because it's actually the convenience is not outweighing the fact that they're not very fun to play on the Switch. So the Steam Deck comes along, kind of solves that for me. And so, I'll sit around waiting until the next Nintendo exclusive comes out, and I will happily play that on my Switch. But I get why people want another one, and I get why people want a more powerful one. I'd be right there with you. But, I'm also thankful that the Steam Deck line, the production lines are getting cleaned up, because that, frankly, you should buy a Steam Deck more than you should expect Nintendo to ship a Switch 2. However long it takes Valve to send you one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I get people want to have the physical cards that the Switch has.
Totally
and the
get
Steam
it.
Deck doesn't, and a lot of people are still okay, the Steam Deck seems complicated. It's not. They get put in so many rails and safeguards to make sure that you're just going to have a consoleized experience.
Yeah,
I can't. I mean, people know I can't speak highly enough of the Steam Deck. It's so good. I still expect, the way that they've gone with from people have been waiting weeks and weeks to now suddenly we're in this place where oh no, we're launching in new territories, and everyone that orders one now is going to get it by the end of the year. I think that thing is in at least one retail store by the end of this year. I think it's probably going to be in a Best Buy or something, and it's going to just keep growing from there. I think it's just too good not to. It's real. It is the ideal way for many people to play games. Now the people that always come and I just play everything on the TV. You have a different life than I do. For me, I needed the Steam Deck, and it's finally here is what it feels like.
And I need their production capacity to catch up, because when I play the Steam Deck, everyone's talking about, oh, I need a Switch 2 or a Switch Pro. You know what I need? I need a Steam Deck 2. I need a Steam Deck Pro. Like, it's really good, but it feels like a template for the ultimate device that will be the one after this. Like, it's really good. It fits almost all the use cases.
It's way better than it has any right to be, and yet it still could be really. It's
you can't help but look at it and be like, oh man, like internally at Valve, the one that I truly like. You know, I was playing Live Alive. Like, you know what? Is an OLED screen? Is it a make or break? No. Does it look good? Does it look good as hell, though? And would an OLED screen look awesome on the Steam Deck?
Yes, man.
It would.
Every time I use that OLED, I'm like, man, the screen is real.
It's really good.
But you're right. It's not like if I had to choose between the Steam Deck or the Switch, I'm probably choosing the Steam Deck for the performance. But that OLED screen, goddamn. Good. And especially with Live Alive, man, that game looks really good on that with that OLED screen.
Cocaine Moon, will there be a Steam Deck 2 before there's a Switch 2? I'm confident in saying
no.
I mean, but would you be surprised?
No, I guess I wouldn't.
If there was maybe not.
The pace they're going now, I wouldn't be too surprised.
If there was an OLED Steam Deck before there was a Switch 2,
yes, that
would not shock me.
Yes, right, because we're gonna get through this year with like the Steam Deck just on its own merits. By next holiday, they could have a revision of some kind, like with an OLED screen or something. Absolutely. Right. But we were able to shrink down the process, so now we have more room for a bigger battery and an OLED screen, and maybe we're raising the price $50 because we can. That kind of stuff, I could see that happening. All right, let's see. This is the question for next week. Do you use or plan to use any gaming subscription family plans? I'm just kind of interested to see if there's much of a market for the people that normally tune into this stuff. I'm going to put this on Twitter right now. Slain McAwesome in chat usually posts these into chat, so thank you, Slain, for doing that if you're here today. If not, you guys can find it on my Twitter. All right, Patrick, where can people find you? Where can people hang out with you? So I know you guys got a ton of stuff going on Waypoint all the time. I am a subscriber to what you guys call Waypoint Plus.
Yes.
That stuff. So people should do that. What do you guys got going on?
Look, Giant Bomb, Waypoint, we love subs. You can follow me personally at twitter.com/Patrick Klepek. I'm writing for Waypoint at waypoint.vice.com, but we have Waypoint Plus, which gets you access to a bunch of it's some stuff that is subscriber only. It is also a way working under a corporate company to sort of unlock enough money for us to do things that we just want to do. Like the Twitch streams only exist because people subscribed at Waypoint Plus, but those are for everybody. And so we really appreciate the folks that subscribe over there that allow us to kind of, I am now back playing Elden Ring once a week all day because I got 50 hours into that game, fell off it.
I saw your stream and you were like, I'm playing it all day. And I'm like, I wonder if he just never beat it. Like, this is an excuse to make sure he does. Okay.
This is my way back into that game because what happened, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, is like, hey, I need to play new games to write about and talk about. I can't just talk about the 5 hours of Elden Ring I'm playing each week on our podcast. And so I kind of just fell off Elden Ring and I was like, I just need like a big push to get back into it. And so I'm starting to play it once a week, all day, ordering terrible food, White Castle, Taco Bell along with it. I don't know what I'm going to order next week, but if you want to watch that and many other things, you can join us over at twitch.tv/Waypoint.
Awesome. And let's see, today, UPF, we're doing 2002 games. I think there's probably a couple other quick looks that went up. I can't remember everybody, but thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Patrick, thank you so much for joining me. This was awesome. I had a really good time talking with you.
Me too.
Until next time, everybody, you're the best audience in gaming. Have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.